is Joe Rocco, Calabria, and I'm an artist. My profession, though, in St. Augustine is barbering. I was trained as a barber stylist in San Francisco and then became a hairdresser, but I work primarily as the St. Augustine barber. One day, I was in Santa Cruz, California, and I walked in to a barber shop where a fellow named Joe Sorachi was cutting hair. It was a one-man shop. He was an older guy, first initiate in transcendental meditation, he told me, and he could play jazz guitar like nobody's business, like Wes Montgomery or Joe Pass. So I used to go in there whenever I was in town to ask him about music and how he played guitar, because I like to play guitar. And he said to me what happened, and I told him, you know, I had an accident, and I actually cut my hand is what had happened. And he said, well, what are you going to do with your life? And I was miffed. He said, you have to do something, Joe. And I said, well, I never gave it any thought. And he said, well, why don't you do what I do? And my retort was, I already play guitar. He said, no, cut hair. You're Italian. You'd be a natural. He said, what is confidence anyway? But if the guy next to you can do it, so can Tony Awards. It's an interesting story. How it started was I was working for a company called Mad Hatters in Virginia, and they fired me or let me go for calling them churchgoers, and I was quite miffed. So, but at one of their classes, hair color classes, I stole a cape from the instructor because he was talking about working on Capitol Hill, and I thought if I had something I could return to him, I could have a meeting. So I called him, and I said I took this thing by mistake, and we had a lunch meeting. And that day, I got hired by the salon. It was called RPM, and there were a great bunch of guys and women, and they had a makeup artist there who held the contract to the Tony Awards, Comedy Central, Friars Club Roast, all the concerts on the Mall, Washington, Christmas in Washington, the Memorial Day concert, 4th of July celebration, the President's Own TV show, and various other events. He was the makeup artist who was called by the producers in LA to work makeup. So when I started working in that salon, first they said, well, you had to work in the salon for a year before you could come and work on the shows with us. And here's a contract for you to sign, and you won't get paid. And I was like, okay, fine, I signed it. Within 6 months, when the events started to happen, suddenly they didn't have a hairstylist that could do updos and present, do presentation hair, like wedding hair, so to speak. So they asked me to do it, and the very first one was in 1999, and I think the first star that I got to work on was Bea Arthur of the Golden Girls. And she was quite a hoot. She was really, really funny. Tony Danza, Al Pacino, Carol Burnett was sitting in the room for a couple of hours while I was working on everyone else. Swoosie Kurtz. That was just that one day. I can't even remember. It's a blur. I should have brought a list for you. But it went on for about 6 or 7 years. And over the years, I met quite a few stars. George Carlin, Clint Eastwood, Charles Durning. There were so many. And Christian Chenoweth. So I was in charge of doing the hair. I wasn't allowed to talk to them, mind you. So I had to, that was really hard for me. As you can see, I have trouble keeping quiet, or so I'm told that. But it was a lot of fun. So that was the name of my salon, Be Hair Now. And I had it there in Louisiana for about 8 years, and it was a gallery / hair place. Sometimes guys would walk in and stop and say, barber shop, which was right next door. Of course, they didn't hire me, so I was so okay. And then sometimes guys would walk in and say, this place is much too fancy for me. But other times, people would come in and thought it was a breath of fresh air in the Deep South in Louisiana, where this crazy guy had artwork on the wall and was doing hair color like nobody else could. So it was fun. Turned out to be fun. How I got to St. Augustine is very interesting. It's very interesting. My mother-in-law retired here, And when she got breast cancer and called one day, she called the house in Louisiana, I was shocked. And so Catherine and I came to St. Augustine, and I thought, you know, wow, this is really, there's some kind of charm here that no other city has. I mean, it's not just because it's the oldest city in the country. There's an actual vibration that I feel of art and Renaissance. And I think people here know that it's quite a special place and maybe can't put their finger on why. But I recognized it, and I made a decision that I wanted to live here. So we tied up all our bows and strings in Louisiana, in loose ends to get here, and we're quite fortunate to find a residence and move in. Now, it seems like Old Times Barbershop, the people that I work for are really nice people, Ralph and Mary, and they've been here near 20 years, and they're barbers, you know, like the way I was trained in the 70s. And I came here, I couldn't find a job. I had no clientele, and so renting a chair in a salon was not an option, or even trying to find a good fit where I could get along with everyone. But having no clientele sort of put me in a position where I had to keep looking. And one day I found an ad on Craigslist, part-time barber wanted. And I thought, wow, let me go check it out. So when I walked in here, I was hired on the spot by this lovely couple that owns this place. And it's sort of ironic because I remember saying to my wife as we drove by 2 years prior, I said, you know, things could be worse. I could be working in that place. And now here I am.